Hello, I'm Catherine Stanley, Chair of the Organizational and Leadership Psychology Department at William James College. We are educating organizational psychology professionals to assist leaders and their companies in meeting their goals while creating thriving and vibrant internal workplace cultures. Our graduates work in for-profits and not-for-profits in all industries, from large and boutique consulting firms to military and government. For those of you who are new to our podcast series, Leadership Hacks, it will air once a month to examine timely topics and current events through the lens of organizational and leadership psychology. By sharing the psychology that influences individuals, teams, and whole systems, we endeavor to help you shift your thinking and see the world in a new way. With this new perspective, you can discover innovative approaches to solving the complex problems all business professionals face. We hope the insights offered by our experts are helpful to you as you tune in. So here today on Leadership Hacks, we're here with Maria Katsarou, who's a fourth-year doctoral student in our Leadership Psychology Department at William James in our Leadership Psychology PsyD. Maria, you've been doing some amazing work on trust and oxytocin on leadership team. So I'm so glad you're here to talk to us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here too.
Why did you decide to study this topic?
I got curious about teams and how they function quite some time ago when I was still working in the corporate world. And the truth is that I was one of these people that actually hated being in teams. I hated working in groups. I was never at my best. So whenever you would put me to work in a team, I was actually at my worst. And so in later years, when I went into psychology, I started to study them and got actually fascinated by them and what may be happening when a group of people come together. Because it's when a group of people come together, it's just beyond the addition of individuals. It's much more than that. And we come into a group with our personal travel bags, obviously.
You mean like baggage, individual baggage?
Yes.
That happens in teams.
And which unconsciously will affect our behavior within that group of people. So this dynamics, which I like to refer to as a dynamical mix, sometimes can be really, really fascinating. And the oxytocin comes in because of actually you and your course in neuroscience, which really opened new horizons. And I was fascinated, and I came across the relationship of oxytocin and trust, and this is how I decided to study this topic.
I think that's the best way to study a topic too, and you have some personal interest in it from experience, right? Who hasn't felt uncomfortable on a team, or they didn't know what to say, or they were worried about, how am I going to come across? Can I trust these people? And those issues when you have to work in a team become really big and powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And do I speak up, and when do I speak up, and all those things? Yeah,
absolutely. So oxytocin, though, this is kind of, and we're studying neuroleadership here at William James, but the use of oxytocin in the corporate world has been pretty minimal in terms of research, right?
Yes. Yeah. First of all, let's take this from the beginning.
Yeah.
Beyond our physical needs of thirst, hunger, and sleep, from a psychological perspective, another really important need is the interpersonal need of attachment, which begins at birth or even earlier. And it's the most substantiated basic need. Why? Because it has been found that not fulfilling this basic need may even be linked to mental disorders. This need of attachment is shared with other social animals. So we have insight from research conducted in mammals. So the patterns for a human style of attachment are formed and influenced during the recurrent relationship that a child experiences with their primary caregiver. So the hormone that has been associated with this need is oxytocin. Its name comes from a Greek word which means quick birth, because initially they thought that it's only women who have that hormone when they give labor, when they are in labor. So, and what happened afterwards is that several studies have shown a correlation between trust and oxytocin. And the most common of these studies involve getting a group of people together, asking them to play trust games. And what then they did is they administered intranasal synthetic oxytocin, basically sprayed them to the participants, and they asked them to play the games again. And they managed to prove that their trust actually increased just by the administration of this hormone.
So workplace practices, let's give our employees a little sniff of oxytocin.
Yes, start spraying them. Forget the team building activities.
Right, exactly. And you're making me think about Paul Zach's work, his TED Talk around this, where he's talking about how we get oxytocin naturally.
Absolutely.
And so I think you probably looked at that a little bit too.
Naturally, it could be even when we hug. Right. Or when we stroke an animal, or there are studies of giving shoulder massages where oxytocin increases. So yes,
so employee wellness programs had it right to begin with. They just didn't know the neural components of that.
Absolutely.
So what other factors might impact a leadership team's trust in each other?
There are several actually, and this can be an endless discussion. But what I came across was that it can be quite subjective in the sense that it depends how you define trust. For example, your definition of trust might be completely different from my definition of trust. And you have to start there. However, based on the experiences, there is a lot of aspects that have to do with feeling psychologically safe within a group. And what that means is, am I able and free to speak up without being consequences? Another factor is how a group of people or a team handles conflict. In the sense, do we deal with it in a constructive manner, or do we tend to hide away from it to a point that there is so much accumulated conflict that it becomes toxic? So these are just two of aspects of other factors. But it seems that trust is like the basis. So if you don't have trust, there's no way you can have a constructive discussion about conflict.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. And you've been consulting to teams for what?
I've been working in the corporate world for 13 years, and I've been working as a consultant for the last 9 years.
Right.
And
so for this, you used a little bit of David Kantor's model of structural dynamics.
Yes.
So tell me, why did you choose to work with that? And because you did a quasi-experimental design, which is really interesting. But as an interventionist in the field, in a corporate setting, which is pretty unusual. So I'd love to hear why you chose the elements of your design the way you did.
Absolutely. First of all, I chose a leadership team because, as we say in plain language, the fish smells from the top. So I wanted to start at the top, and I believe that the higher up you go in an organization, the more things tend to happen, the more interesting things tend to happen. So that's one aspect. Structural dynamics, again, that's another thing. I'm grateful to you because you were the one who introduced me to the work of David Kantor. So, and structural dynamic is based on David's work. And in all these years, I've worked with a lot of models and psychometrics and everything. And of course, there is no model that is perfect.
Right.
However, this work of David, I have found that is work that it has results. It really has tangible results with teams. Second, participants just get it immediately. They seem to understand the concept immediately, and I get, as an interventionist, the least of challenge. While with other models or psychometrics, they start getting into discussions of what's the statistics behind the questionnaire and so on. So I was fascinated to observe that. So because I've seen it work, I wanted to add the neuroscience bit to make the results a bit more tangible.
Yeah.
Because in the corporate world, as you know better than I, there's a lot of suspiciousness for psychological theories. Yeah.
What's my return on my investment for my consultant?
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's another reason why I wanted to, let's say, have this interdisciplinary approach.
I think that makes your study strong.
Thank you. I hope so. It's I've seen it work. I believe in Kantor's model. So I wanted to. I'm hoping that more people will start using it.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. You can build the most beautiful interventions collaboratively, but then the leadership team who's responsible for them at the interpersonal face-to-face interaction can't connect and can't understand each other and can't handle conflict, and they have no model through which to do that. And that's what I love, from the structural dynamics and the 4-player model in particular allows you to have. So you